Hello again. Today I am going to show you what are the HTTP method that use in Spring Boot. Mainly I am talking about get, post, delete and put method. In here I assume example uh, like saving a fruit to the DB and get detail about the fruit from the DB. So first we need a DTO class, that means data transfer object. Let's say you are sending a payload from the somewhere else like postman, then we need to map the attribute to our Java code. So for that we need DTO. In here I'm creating fruit DTO. So I'm using some basic attribute in fruit: name, origin of country, and quantity. Like that basic attributes I'm using. And another thing, I'm using a ID for our fruit. Okay, previously we created getters and setters manually. In here we use Lombok, so we can use getters and setters from the Lombok dependency. You can see once you click with the control, you can see the where it came. Previously you have to right click and like that you have to create getters and setters. Now I'm creating a controller. This is a REST controller. All the REST endpoint we can create in here. You have to put this REST controller annotation. If it is a REST controller, then it supports to JSON. If it is a controller, then it's a model view MVC architecture. This is the now we are going to create a microservice, so we use REST controller. And the request mapping. Request mapping mean what is your path, what is your URL. So in here I use @sh4j for logging. Then you can write logs inside for your code. So now I'm creating a post method. For the post method, I'm creating a post method. So I'm creating a response entity. Our return type is response entity. Response entity means response plus response body. Response means let's say you are front end developer, need some information about the response code and the response headers, response code. For that we need to use response entity, and we can get the fruit DTO from here. Then once you are sending request from the postman, it will convert to this fruit DTO, and you have to use request body annotation, otherwise it won't be working. So, and you have to use post mapping, since this is a post method. So this is the save method. Basically the request mapping we need to use plural word, not fruit. It's like fruits. So then you don't need to specify. This is a general term. This is the best practice. If you are using plural name for the request mapping, then we don't need to specify save, delete or get. If it is a post method, then developer knows this is a saving code. So we can in here I'm adding some comment to be clarified to you. So in here I'm sending fruit data from my front end or postman. Postman client. So in here I want to save these details. So for the moment I'm creating a Java collection to store the details. Going forward in future videos I will I will store to the MySQL using JPA. So stay touch with me. I will show you those video as soon as possible. So I'm creating a map. I'm going to store these fruits details to the map. My primary keys, my ID is ID type is long and the fruit details. So in here I'm sending a fruit object to the save method, and directly I can put that to a method, and I can return the response entity. Basically response entity we need to set what is the status. If it is a successful, then it is successfully saved, then we have to use create HTTP created. These are required when we are writing a microservices, because front-end developer or other let's say some services they are using your service, then they need to know what is the exact output of the HTTP method, and this is the HTTP status. You can see lot of HTTP code there, and the successful message. For the moment I am using string for the message. Later I will show how to handle response and how to handle errors in my future videos. You can put some logs here, then this is for the logging. It will be helpful when you are writing a microservice. Follow these steps. Now I get the size of the fruit DB. Then I can see how many fruit object being saved to the database. Now you can run the main method. Sometimes your IDE asks for enable the annotation processor, then you have to enable if you are using Lombok. If you are not using Lombok, you have to create getters and setters. Otherwise, if you are not creating the getters and setters, data won't be set to the your Java object. Now I'm creating a post method for our project. So my URL would be like localhost 8080, my port is 8080, and the URL is fruits. So in here you have to go to the body and row section, and you have to store the body like a JSON format. In here you have to use same Java variable names, otherwise data won't be set. If you are using different name, then the Java side you have to use the JSON attribute name using there's a springboot annotation. JSON the annotation is JSON property. Now I'm going to save my database data to the database. You can see request response code is 201, then it created. Now I'm going to send a request again, so I change the payload. Now I send a request, it's also created. Now you can see my map has been updated to 2. Now my map size is 2. That's how post method works. Let's jump to the get method. In here, first I'm creating get all fruits from the database. So I'm creating a get method. I'm using a list to retrieve all the fruit detail from the database. My method, you can use any method name. I'm using get all. In here you have to use at get mapping. If you need, you can use customize URL mapping, but I'm using since I use fruits, so I don't use any specific name for that. In here when you jump to the industry, you cannot get all like this. You have to pass size and the page as a parameter, request parameter. Later I will show you how we can add path variables, request parameters for the get mapping. For the moment I'm using get all. Now I can get all the fruits from the database. In here our map is the database. When you are writing a code, the IntelliJ IDEA will provide some suggestion, the best practices, so you can use those best practices. And here I'm sending all the fruit details which are in the my map. So you can use some logs, you can add some comments what this method does, like that. Every time you have to add logs to your application. There are few logs level: info, debug, error and trace. Now I can rerun the project. Now I'm going to send a request from the postman. So my URL parameter is this one. URL is localhost 8080 fruit. The method is get all. The purpose is get all. Method is get. I'm going to send a request. Before that, you have to save some data to the database, because we stopped the project. We are using a map. So once we stop the project, all the data will be erased. So the expected output in here is 2. Yes, we can see 2 fruits in our database. So that's how get method works. You can see the size of the fruit database. Now I'm going to create get by id method. You can get specific fruit from the database passing its id. So I created get by id method. We can annotate using get mapping. In here you have to pass a parameter. What is the id? In here I'm using request using path variable. If you are using path variable, you have to use path variable annotation and the exact name of the URL value, the get mapping value. The ID should be same here. And you can use some logging to identify which method executes. Now you can directly get the fruit ID from our map. You can add some comment to describe the method and what it does and what are the parameters, what are the return type. Then later developer can understand the method. These are best practices you have to follow when you are going to jump to the industry. You have to follow these steps. And let's run the project. Okay, just copy the URL and put the path variable. How we can identify the path variable is after the slash we can use a value. If it is a request param, then we have to pass after the question mark. I will show that later. We can save some fruits to our database. Now we can check what are the available fruits in our database. We have 2 fruits and we can pass the ID and we can get the relevant fruit from our DB. This also belongs to the get HTTP get method. I hope you can understand. Now I'm going to create a method. It's also belongs to HTTP get method. I'm going to create a method get by fruit. It's by its name. My method name would be get by name. In here I'm going to pass a path variable, a request parameter. So we don't need path variable here. For every method I will put the comments, so then you can identify the method once you pull the code from my GitHub. In the description section I will put the GitHub URL, then you can go to my GitHub and check out the code and check out to the relevant branch. For the every video I will create a new branch for you. In here we have to use request param. The first previous HTTP method we use path variable. That is the different. If you are using request param, you have to pass the parameters after the question mark in the URL. If it is a path variable, then you have to pass your value after the slash. That means with the request URL. In here I'm sending a name, fruit name, along with my URL. We can get the specific value from our DB, from our map. When you are passing request parameter or path variable, or for the force method, if we are using DTO, you have to validate. Otherwise, anyone can send SQL injection, SQL attacks. So the validation we have to do. In my future video, I will show how we can validate these parameters. So stay touch with me. Here I use Java stream function to get a fruit from my map. So in here I get fruit according to its name. So we can run the code and we can test our HTTP GET method. Okay, let's test the code. Yeah, we can see error because it already mapped. Then we have to change the URL URL path name for the get mapping. For the get all, we use same mapping. So in here we have to specific some different mapping name. Here I'm going to use by name. Now run again. It got started. So we can save some fruit to the database. In here we don't have any fruit now because we started again our application. I added 2 fruits now. You can see 2 fruits. This is get by ID. We don't need that one. This is by name. You have to use the exact endpoint name, the URL bar, and you have to pass the fruit name. Once you pass the fruit name, you can see the fruit details from our database. Yes, we can see I passed cherry. Now I can see cherry. If we are passing another name, that is not in the database, we cannot see the data in the database. That's how it works. Now I'm going to create a put method. Using put method, we can update the data in our database. So it's just like a HTTP post method. We can pass put DTO into our database, into our controller. We can use same request body annotation and our put DTO to pass the data to the REST controller from the Postman client. And also you can pass path variable. Why we are using that path variable is we have to tell to the REST controller what is the fruit object that we are going to update. So in here we are going to update according to the fruits ID. So we have to pass ID as a path variable. In here now we can see two sections. One is request body, another one is path variable. We can copy the URL mapping and we can update it to a put mapping, since this is an update method. So we can, I copied some code from the previous steps. Since this is a map, I can pass same ID and different object, so it will update. So we can return whatever the saved data as a response. So I add few logs. In here we can directly pass the ID, because this is a map. If you are using JP, then you can sometimes you can search according to the ID using JPA and get the details and set the new details from the DTO. Let's run the project. So we can copy the same post request and we can change the method as a put, and same body we can copy. We can save the data, we can get the data, and we can update the data. Now I'm going to change the name of my foot object, and we can update. Now it says got updated, and we can verify, we can double check using get all method. You can see it got updated. Now let's jump to the delete method. We can create a delete method like this. We can use response entity to return the data to the front end or any other service, and we can use any name to the method. I used my method name as a delete, and I copied the get mapping, and I changed it to the delete mapping, because in here also we have to pass same path variable, because I'm going to delete my fruit according to the fruit's ID, so I use same ID there. So we can add some looks to our code. Now we can remove the item from our map. Now we can add a return statement to our method that says what is the final operation, like it got deleted or not. So let's run the project. In here, please note, in here some points I'm not using exactly best practices. Assume line number 111, we have to pass, if it is an error, we have to pass error code. If it is a success, then we have to pass success message with the relevant format. So let's save some data to the database. And verify the data from the get method. Yes, we have some data now. Now we can create the delete method. We can pass the fruit ID in the URL bar. Now we can test our delete method. It says data deleted, but we can see not deleted. Let's find the issue. Yeah, in here I used integer, but I stored my IDs, fruit ID, in long data type. Let's run again and see. Yeah, we can save some data to the database. Yes, now we have 2 objects in our database, so we can delete one object from the database. Now we can check, yes, it got deleted successfully. So that's how delete method works. Mm, I think referring this video series, you can understand what are the get, post, delete and put method, and how they work in the practical manner. And in addition to that, I will add some I teach you how to add hooks and some best practices that we can use to our industrial project according to the industrial experience, so you can learn more thing about Spring Boot reading some materials. You can check out the code. I put this code source URL in the description bar. You can check out the code from GitHub. If you are having any problem, please do let me know in the comment section. So if I have a time, I will reply back to you. Yeah, like this you can in IntelliJ will suggest some best practices, so you can follow these things as well, and you can clean your code. So guys, thanks for the watching this video. Stay touch with me, so future I will upload new video related to Spring Boot, then you can learn a lot of things.